Do the Niners trade or extend Brandon Aiyuk?
So Brandon Aiyuk is the easiest tradable player on the whole roster for a couple reasons. He's the easiest to be traded by the 49ers from the standpoint that the $14.1 million he makes this year is fully guaranteed 5th-year option, which means it goes to the new team. So they have a 0 cap hit if they trade him. Also, you're going to get a first-round pick for him. You look at a team like the Texans that has Cleveland's number 1 pick this year. I think it's like 21. That's about what you're going to get for Brandon Aiyuk. And that team makes a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk. So I think from that standpoint, it's much easier to trade Brandon Aiyuk. It's much easier to swallow trading him because you're going to get more for him and you're not going to take a cap hit. However, with this offseason strategy that we've talked about, we're already getting rid of Deebo Samuel. Absolutely not getting rid of Brandon Aiyuk. Extending him is still going to save about $10.4 million this year against the cap, which is very significant. And you've got your number 1 weapon for the future to grow with Brock Purdy. He's the perfect weapon in the sense that he is a route runner. He does get open against man. That's exactly what Brock needs. Absolutely extend Brandon Aiyuk. Give him his 26, 27 million he wants. Save the 10.4 this year. Keep him around for the long term. We'll be good to go.
I think this is a no-brainer. And the other two we talked, Juszczyk and Deebo, we made the argument why we would move on and both agreed that the Niners probably won't. This one, I think, is just they're going to keep Brandon Aiyuk. If something goes wrong and Brandon Aiyuk's not on this team, it would be devastating and it would be a big mistake. And I think it would be bad for the locker room. Deebo Samuel came out and told Kay Adams, like, don't worry about it. He's coming back. It would just be, it's not the time to trade Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe you give him an extension. It could be a 3-year extension, a 4-year extension. And when he's 28 or 29, trade him then. But now at 25, when he's just getting started with Brock Purdy, the two of them have really good chemistry and Brock's still making minimum wage. Now you trade him? No. Structure the extension in such a way that you can maybe trade him in 2-3 years. Fine. But not now. That would be such a disaster. And I don't think they will.
I don't think so either. Here's what does worry me though, Grant. I think every time a receiver gets signed, it pushes it closer to him being traded, right? Because his money's going up.
Didn't help
at all. That did not help. If Jefferson somehow gets a deal early before this draft and gets like 31 million, which is probably where he's going to be, that's not going to help either. Not that Ayuk's going to go over that, but it means that 28 million is more likely. And also, a lot of people found comfort in the fact that the rumor came out that Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers were going to work on an extension right after free agency. I actually looked at it the opposite way because the 49ers tend to wait on their contracts. So if they're trying to enter negotiations right after free agency, that tells me they're probably trying to gauge what the dollar amount is. What is the floor for Brandon Aiyuk? And if they feel like it's too high, they'll move on from him just like they did Buckner. And I think that's where the worry comes in.
The market could price them out.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now,
because
I do want to say this.
Crazy. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. But I want to say this, and this is what gives me room for pause when it comes to them trading Brandon Aiyuk, because they have said some great things about him recently. Kyle Shanahan, when he was asked about him, said, I know he's someone that we want here for a long time. And when John Lynch was asked about him, he said, we want him to be a Niner for a long time. He's an excellent football player. He's an excellent human being, and he's an excellent leader. Mm-hmm. And that made me feel good. But then I realized those were not quotes about Brandon Aiyuk. Those were quotes about Buckner right before they traded him.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And when you say we want this dude here for a long time, that's kind of code for saying, does he want to be here? We want him here.
Exactly.
But does he want to be here? Because if he wants to be here, then he's going to have to work with us. But if he wants every single penny he can get on the open market, then that's what he wants to do. That means he doesn't necessarily have to be here. He wants to go wherever he can get his number. And if Brandon Aiyuk has a number in mind and won't budge off of it, that's sort of what that means. I mean, I don't think they're going to give him $28 million a year. And if he feels he can get it somewhere else, they might be at an impasse.
And that's what I think they're going to try to figure out right as the free agency period kind of kicks off, because they need to know if this is something that they can get done at a price point that they think he's worth. And if not, you can't trade him after. You're not going to let him play out this 5th-year deal. You're going to have to sign him, or you're going to have to trade him.
I would hate it though, because you'd be trading him because you couldn't trade Debo. It's like, oh well, we're already spending $28 million on this wide receiver over here, and we have to give him a bunch of targets. We don't have that many targets for Brandon Aiyuk, and he is great, but we can't. It's like, well, that's your fault. So you're trading the better, younger wide receiver because you messed up and gave that guy a bunch of money, and it's like, well, this is easier financially. Like, that's weak. I don't know, man. Maybe some Niner fans, well, football fans in general, can sort of do the mental gymnastics to support whatever a team does, especially when they're successful. But a lot of Niner fans, I think, would be really upset if this went down. Aiyuk. I mean, I'm giving away a signed Aiyuk jersey. Someone's going to be really invested in this guy.
Could you imagine? Maybe that's why people aren't entering. They're like, I don't know. Is he going to be here? I don't know.
Really Should weird. I really waste $10 on this? I don't know.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you had to put your most prized possession on this bet, and one of them for sure was going to be gone, you just didn't know which one. The 49ers were either going to outright cut Juszczyk or trade Brandon Aiyuk. What would you put your bet on?
Trade Aiyuk.
He's
just not in the inner circle like they say he is. He's not. And that's why we keep coming back. Because you know who else was it? Buckner. He wasn't. You know why? Because he stood on business. I wanted to say it again, and I did. Aiyuk stands on business too. Not sure how or what that means, but I really have a strong feeling that Brandon Aiyuk is standing on business right now. I think the Niners have a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like he's a bit of an outsider for whatever reason. I don't know what.
Some people are just outsiders by nature.
Yeah.
Like that. The book, The Outsiders. They were all
right.
Outsiders.
He also was recently doing a live with Jaden Daniels again, who is a good friend of his, who is projected
Jaden Daniels in the locker room after they won the NFC Championship game? Did I not see him in there? He was.
Yeah, he was.
Right?
He was.
I was like, hey, that's Jaden Daniels. Hey, how about that? You're the Niners?
That's why the whole him to go into the Raiders thing came out, was because of that. Because him and Jaden Daniels are friends and they expect Jaden Daniels to end up there. So that's why his brother was like, oh, get him to Vegas or something. It's like, hey, why would he go to Vegas? Oh, that's why.
Brandon, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. It's going to be a very stressful.
Rough.
It's going to be a very stressful few months. And I thought it was funny. Debo Samuel was on the Kay Adams show and said, don't worry, I got this. I'm talking to him. Debo, the guy who requested a trade.
I mean,
damn. It's bad news.
Debo just went through it though. So maybe in hindsight, he's looking back on it as like, you know what? It wasn't worth all that.
I overreacted.
Yeah. If I would have just known I was going to get paid anyways, I probably would have chilled out a little bit. And so maybe he's talking to Brandon Aiyuk about it as well. I don't have a problem with that, actually. I know that it seems weird, but Debo's a couple years older. And I don't mind that he wants to kind of step in and be a leader here and just like, hey, don't get stressed, man. It'll get taken care of. They're going to say a lot of terrible shit about you. You got to be prepared for that. It's not personal. They said it about me too. And I still got 24 a year. You'll be fine.
So all I know is, bringing it back before we leave this topic, to Buckner. He wanted $21 million a year annually. It meant, I think, a lot to his ego, pride, whatever, self-esteem, to be over that $20 million a year mark. It meant a lot to him, and he got it. And I think it meant a lot to the Niners to not go over that mark for him or any defensive tackle not named Aaron Donald or Chris Jones at the time. This was 4 years ago. So they drew a line. They're like, we're not doing that. You want 21, we'll offer you 18. It doesn't seem like a big gap, but it was enough for the Niners to move on. What's the gap between Brandon Aiyuk and the Niners? I was talking about this with Tom Jensen the other day. Like, if Evans got 26, then Aiyuk could conceivably ask for 27 or 28. And the Niners might say, we'll offer you 24, what we offered, or 25. If they're apart $3 million a year, that was enough to break down the negotiations.
Here's the real question, though. Here's the real question, which is, who was the focal point in the Super Bowl? It wasn't Aiyuk, it was Debo.
Yep.
And they're paying Debo 24. So do they really think that Aiyuk is worth that much? I mean, are they going to come in at like 22?
Maybe not.
I mean, he's looking at it going, are you kidding me? Debo got 24 2 years ago.
Call his number. Yeah. Like for his 6 targets a game, they're going to really give him $27 million. They don't use him like that.
His floor is 26. I'd be surprised at anything less than 26. Maybe I could see him going 25. Maybe if he just totally gives in. I don't think it's going to be less than 26. And whether it's the 49ers or another team, somebody's going to give him that money. So I expect that he's going to stay. I do. I'm not saying he's going to get traded. I'm certainly not advocating for him to get traded. But again, it comes down to it is the easiest trade to stomach for the 49ers because they clear the whole cap and they'll get a first-round pick.
It was kind of alarming that he didn't produce in the Super Bowl. He did produce in the NFC Championship game. And you chalk that up to just not getting the opportunities. But then you hear Dave Merritt, the Chiefs DB coach, come out and just roast Brandon Aiyuk and essentially said, like, you let your emotions take you out of the game, Brandon. And I think that's kind of interesting, like something I hadn't thought about with him because he does everything so well and he's so passionate and he goes to that dark place that Kyle Shanahan talks about that he likes players to go to, but you can get in his head. Good teams do. Chiefs did. So I don't know if that's something he outgrows or if that's a weakness in his game, like how Brock Purdy can't throw in the rain. But that kind of gives me pause. And I always my new paradigm is what would the Chiefs do? I think in the NFL, you should be thinking that way. What's the best team in the league? What would they do? Would the Chiefs extend Brandon Aiyuk?
They wouldn't have extended Debo. So
no. So something to think about.